In this episode, I'm speaking with several technology leaders about a major update to Boston Dynamics robots, Meta pushing virtual reality onto children, AI-powered shoes, robots rebelling against humans, and AR glasses which allow you to see through walls. So make sure that you stick around until the end of this video so that you can learn all of the latest tech news and industry trends. Welcome back to Podcast.
The Alfie Whattam podcast.
Okay, so first clip, if you're watching on video, now is a good time to have a look at the screen. This is a major AI update to Boston Dynamics, to their world of robotic dogs. The robot dog called Spot from Boston Dynamics can now independently open doors. So in the past, you had to manually control it for this task. I've actually tried it myself. It's like a Nintendo Switch device that you hold when you like press on buttons and stuff. But due to advanced machine learning, it can now move around warehouses or factories or retail stores or whatever without the need for constant human supervision. So Spot has gained some intelligence. It's got smarter. There's been a big update to it, and now it's able to operate a lot more freely without the need for humans being involved. Let's get your thoughts and reactions to this. Alex, what's your take when you see that clip?
Yeah, I think it's generally quite an impressive upgrade. I think the process of opening a door is quite challenging, and being able to do that purely from AI is very impressive. Instantly, I'm going to... There's lots of different types of door with many different types of handle, so I'd really love to see its performance across a broad range of categories. Other than that, I think it's quite good. I also really enjoyed in the article, they announced this alongside a kill switch being installed. Okay. And I really love this idea that there's always this tension between perceived utility and perceived threat. Yeah. And this idea that robots can now open doors. Oh God, don't worry, we've installed a kill switch. Yeah. It reminded me of that episode of Doctor Who where the Daleks can suddenly fly and you're no longer safe just by running up some stairs. You're no longer safe from robots just by closing a door in their face, which is
I always thought that with Daleks. I mean, like, they are great until they hit a curb and then they're screwed. The doors point is really good because there are some doors they can't actually open. So, like those fire exit doors with like the big thing. I don't think it can do that sort of thing, but anything with like a grip, like a handle, there's a number of different combinations which it's able to do seamlessly. And I've seen many videos of it trying and succeeding really, really well, and like very quickly, 30 seconds, maximum across. Yep. Adrian, what's your take when you see that?
Well, first of all, about the doors, I think in the past the user was indicating where the hinge was.
Yeah, but basically...
So that's probably now learned through machine learning.
You press a button where it showed like an estimation where it was, and you just like tap it, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely complicated to do that. Yeah. So I think it's a big progress in terms of robotics. I also think that it opens up a lot of user cases which were not available beforehand, like going into buildings, opening doors, helping patients in a hospital, transporting food to some people who are not capable of moving, all of that sort of stuff. So if we want to use the robots as a sort of, not a replacement, but as a help, they will have to do things that we do normally, naturally, and opening a door is one of the stuff that we do, I don't know how many times a day. Yeah. So I think it's a great thing. I like the switch. Yeah. Because beforehand there was only possibility in software to do it. Sure. Yeah. But like with the the elevators, you need a red button to stop if someone falls over. Yeah. There is some sort. So this idea of actually building in from scratch any sort of potentials to get into the sort of liability issues. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm all for the kill switch. I think that makes especially the way that
it's also a perception. Growing. It's a perception.
It's marketing. Yeah, people feel safer if they know they can turn it off. I like the point that you mentioned around hospitals. I didn't think of that use case. I think most of the time when I think of these robots, I think of a warehouse, I think of a factory, I think of some power plant, which is great. But if you have one perhaps in the hospital or in the home or in retail, helping people out, opening the door for them, hotels have door people. Why not have a robot doing it? That would bring in some interesting...
Carrying your luggage upstairs.
Absolutely. So we're starting to see robots become more and more applicable to day-to-day life rather than just commercial, manufacturing type applications. applications. What's your view, Kojo, when you see this clip? What's your reaction?
My initial reaction whenever I see any Boston Dynamics clip, I go back to the Black Mirror episode with the killer dogs.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if, given our space, I'm guessing most people have actually seen this, but
the black and white one.
Yeah, the black and white one. It was quite cinematic, beautiful episode. But yeah, I mean, as a human, it's interesting that we go to these kind of quite emotional places when we encounter these quite innovative pieces of technology.
Yeah.
When I see that specifically, I think very much like you said, I think widening consumer use cases and the potential for adoption in a sort of wider market is probably the initial thing that springs to mind. Although, fundamentally, I still think that the biggest value add that you're going to get with a lot of these things is probably more niche use cases, like, as you said, hospitals and construction work and inventory management in factories and all these things. I think we shouldn't understate actually the huge utility we get from those spaces. Outside of that, it is still a little bit scary. The advancement that we've been able to make in the advanced robotics space, I think.
Yeah. What about the jobs side? Because if this works, obviously this will replace millions of jobs globally.
Yeah.
In all types of areas. We're already seeing it with Amazon warehouses, for example, but other aspects of the world will be automated and replaced by machines. Obviously, it will create jobs for developers, for data experts, designers, but it will probably replace more jobs, certainly initially, than it will create. So what's your view on the job side of the coin, Adrian? What's your point of view?
Well, I think that's a trend that we can't go against. It will happen. I think what we can do is prepare for that. I think there will have to be a lot of retraining.
Yeah.
I think the power of any sort of robotic stuff is that they can do things that we can do much faster and with bigger precision.
Yeah.
This is not related to this robot, but for instance, our local hospital, which is Adam Brooks in Cambridge, has just received one of those extremely sophisticated surgical robots.
Oh yeah,
yes.
I spoke about them on the podcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah. And I'm quite happy because I contributed to the whole thing and stuff. And the idea is that you take repetitive, precise actions, and you do them in shorter time with higher precision, and that's something that will allow the people who are doing those things to do something else.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect of thing. The other one is this trend will continue. I mean, those robots are still very expensive. We're not going to see them everywhere yet. But once the stuff is out there and the technology is out there, you can expect the price to come down.
Absolutely. It will start really expensive and then it will become, normal, and everybody in the home will hopefully be able to afford one at some point. And you are correct in the respect that it will replace a lot of jobs, but ultimately those people can be retrained, those people can learn something else, and those people will ultimately find something else. I mean, it's happened throughout history with all innovation.
Exactly.
Well, what's your take, Kojo, on the job side of the equation?
Honestly, I think you just summarized my entire philosophy around this with that last sentence. It has happened throughout history. We would be fools to ignore that rich amount of history that we've got, where we've experienced this through various different aspects outside of even technology, right? So I think we shouldn't resist natural progression and evolution. The caveat is obviously we need to protect people, safeguards, regulation, smart people like ourselves, both working with and outside of government, just trying to do our best to protect people. But fundamentally, the utility society gets from these technological advances just can't be ignored. We improve everyone's lives on the whole. Of course, we make mistakes along the way. As long as we are careful, I think I'm really comfortable with the direction that we're heading.
Yeah. And Alex, jobs, are you excited? Are you scared by what's going to happen? What's your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I broadly agree with everything everyone else has said. I think it will displace some jobs, but replace some of them with higher value ones, fewer kitchen porters or whatever, and more robot engineer maintenance people, which generally are better paid. But a kind of a more philosophical perspective is like the original promise of technology is supposed to be like ever increasing levels of productivity and quality of life for ever reduced amount of human labor. Yeah. Which is like a promise we've never really delivered on. We sort of increasingly just split society into the haves and the have-nots.
Sure.
So those who can and cannot do like the more technologically enabled jobs. So I think actually robotics and AI is probably going to be the technology that eventually bridges that gap and lets us kind of rethink how we model society. So we're not spending all of our time working, but we can like live to enjoy life more, which I think could be very exciting, but that is a way off.
We don't want the opposite end, like the Wall-E situation where we're just sitting in a chair and the machines are doing everything for it. I mean, some people might want that, but I mean, we need to find a balance, right? But I agree. Like we create all this tech and then we don't slow down. We still keep going, but the tech just exponentially grows our activity.
That's a very interesting point because yes, you're expecting these technologies and they have been promised to, increase the quality of life, reduce the price of things, all of that sort of stuff. However, we have to be a little bit mindful of some of those technologies being affordable at the moment only for some rich enterprises.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at large language models and stuff like this, the computation power is only available to the likes of Microsoft, OpenAI, and all of those sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So that there will have to be a separate trend that actually democratizes this by making, opening up, having open APIs and all of that sort of stuff. So that you can allow other people to benefit from that and build on top of that. Otherwise, we're going to create more of those sort of bubbles.
Yeah.
And currently, the society is very polarized, and
You're right on the GPU front. Elon tweeted X'd the other day, I should say, that GPUs are harder to find than drugs, and he's probably right. I mean, like it's
he's right. He's right, but he's also an exponent of that sort of end of
absolutely
technology.
Hey, this podcast is brought to you by WeLoveAlpha.com. If you're looking to grow and hire and scale your software engineering team in the UK, then go to WeLoveAlpha.com to hire the best software developers on the market. Everything across Java to C# to PHP to Python to React and Angular and mobile and more. Go to WeLoveAlpha.com to hire the best software engineers in the UK now. All right, next up we have Meta, a story around virtual reality. This clip was story was sent to me on Twitter or on X, as I need to say now. So feel free to send me clips on there. My handle was on the screen. Essentially, Meta have lowered the VR minimum age requirement to 10. So in a highly controversial move by Mr. Zuckerberg, Meta have announced plans to lower the age of virtual reality users from 13 to 10. Some people are concerned this could lead to privacy and safety issues. Parents are worried. Other people are saying, 10 is too young, but, where do we draw the line? Could you, can a 10-year-old watch TV? Can they play on a smartphone? Is that really much different? Who knows? Keen to get your perspectives on this. Kojo, what's your point of view when you hear about Meta lowering the VR age requirement?
Before I answer, can I do a quick poll to who here has a VR headset or has used one?
Okay, so I've got a lot. I've got like the original Oculus, the new one. I've got the Google Cardboard.
Yeah, that's like your OG.
The OG. I've got like these
I used to run a
smartphone
company
ones.
that was developing VR stuff. So
before your current place. Of course. Yeah. And Alex used VR.
I've used one once and didn't like it.
You do need to use it a little bit more to really grasp it, I believe. But I've done like the haptic suits. I've done the 360 treadmills. I've done the Tesla gloves. I've done every smellometer. I've done all the VR smell.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I recently transitioned from where you are to somewhere in between where you guys are likely, and I've been using the Meta Quest 2, I believe, for the last year or so. And just to tie back to your original question around my thoughts on them just shifting the age. Well, I think the whole thing a little bit more in an abstract fashion, which is what is the difference here actually with how content is consumed in other general ways? Like, and you kind of made that point when you were asking the question, right? Like, where do you draw the line with smartphones, with TV?
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it's, VR, AR, and the entire kind of computerized reality space is still an interface. The content might differ in nature slightly. Obviously, it's slightly more multidimensional than it is on the screen. But fundamentally, the content is what drives controversy and what drives, what shapes people, what influences people. So I think the question for me is less to do with the device itself, but what content occupies that space and what safeguards those devices have to protect younger or more vulnerable people from the content.
It's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, it's less about the platform and more about what's on the platform is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, as somebody who ran a VR company, what's your
I've got lots of concerns about that.
Okay, go for it.
And the reason for that is because, let me say something before that. I believe in the power of VR in terms of anything that has been shown, like neuro rehabilitation, training, surgery training. It's extremely powerful in that sort of space. And the reason why it's so powerful, it's because one of the main pillars of training and learning is the ability to go outside of your context and envisage other scenarios.
Yeah.
Now you can do that through a sort of mind exercise, or you can do it through VR, which allows you, by being completely immersed, to actually almost take over your brain and think that you are in that sort of environment. And that's why it's so powerful. And we used to do experiences of, feeling like you're in between two tall buildings and trying to walk, and people could not do that, although they were in a room.
The walk, the plank, Ritchie's. Yeah.
That's how everyone started.
Yeah, it's the entry point. Yeah.
And now, that advantage also, it's something that I'm concerned in terms of reducing the age. Because we do not know, and there isn't enough research to show that at 8 or 10, the children's developmental progress has finished or not.
Yeah, it's hard. It hasn't been enough time, hasn't there, to do proper research.
So I'm talking now not about some children who use it, 1 hour a week or 1 hour every 2 weeks. I'm talking about the type of use that we see with normal screens.
Yeah.
We do not know if by using it in a sort of regular way, at that sort of age, the vision sensors will be outweighed compared in their development compared to the touch and all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
And there isn't enough research to show if that's correct or not.
This is what Meta are saying in order to get this through. They're saying that there's been no data to suggest this will be harmful to children, which is
I
true.
don't believe that. There is some research in Canada that show that actually what we thought that the development process was finishing at sort of 8, it's now considered that it's probably 10 or later.
Okay.
So yes, probably Meta is saying that.
Yeah,
but
I mean, the flip side, there's not enough research to suggest that it's even good for you. On the other side, what's your point, Alex? When you see this story, do you think lowering it to 10 is okay? Does that make you worried? What do you think of the story?
Yeah, I'm quite similar to the sort of. It's just a way of consuming content, but as stated up front, I've not used VR loads, so it could be that it is much more immersive than I give it credit for.
Yeah. What did you use? Was it an Oculus?
I honestly don't know.
How many years ago was it?
2.
Okay.
So it might be an Oculus.
It wasn't a smartphone. It was an.
It would
have been an Oculus then.
Full-on headset thing.
Yeah.
I actually found it kind of anti-immersive, but I think that's because it was so different to what I'm expecting.
Sure.
And I think in that way it kind of tracks. When I was younger, my parents were worried about how much screen time I was having because it was overwhelmingly more than they would have had when they were children.
Yeah.
So they worried, it's going to affect his development.
Yeah.
And it's not. I'll let my friends comment on whether it did or not. But I don't think society has sort of broadly agreed. Like some of it's fine.
Yeah.
I also kind of think it's cute that Meta thinks that this is going to make a huge difference. I suspect if there's parents out there who really love VR, they're probably letting their young children use it.
Yeah. If the parents want to buy it for the kid, they'll buy it for the kid, won't they? I think at the moment.
I think broadly speaking, to the platform question, at least it's kind of Meta acknowledging that this is a possibility.
Yeah.
Even we're updating our rules, and that means they're going to start putting in controls, which means great, you've caught up to the playing field. Like iPhones, everything they have parental controls now.
Yeah.
So good that they've caught up. Good that they're aware of this, and I think decision pending on whether or not this is something we should really control and think about, or if it's kind of like, it'll come out in the wash anyway.
I think the problem with coming up in a wash is that a lot of those things we sort of let the cat out of the bag first, and then we thought about the implications.
Afterwards,
Even thinking about the implications is a good thing, a priori before those things are out there, because the ability to consume and the desire to consume that sort of content can be quite high, because it's extremely interesting, it's extremely immersive. As I said, in all sorts of non-children applications or adult applications, it has fantastic results, and it will show even more results being used more. But I would like stuff to be known and presented with facts and with some research, so that people actually take a decision which is based on facts around how much shall I allow my kids to be in VR.
Sure.
There is a lot of concern with the younger generation in terms of the use of screens and what does it do in terms of physiological, emotional effects. And I wouldn't like to go with a powerful media in the same sort of cul-de-sac where we actually work on the effects of regular and long-term usage. After we see some sort of effects in the society.
What about the validity of the metaverse? Because if we look at what the metaverse is in terms, I know it's such a not a great word, and Apple, like spatial computing, they didn't use the word metaverse once in their Vision Pro announcement, I think really to try and get away from that branding. But if we just use metaverse as a catch-all term for people spending a large part of their day, every day, in a virtual world where they're working, where they're socializing, where they're watching movies, playing games, etc. Do you think that as a concept will be a reality in, let's say, 5 years from now? Do you think in the same way that we're, addicted to, video on phones, do you think the next transition will be something in front of your eyes as a screen? Probably more on the VR angle rather than the AR angle. I'm asking this question. Metaverse is more like a VR rather than an AR company. It's a bit of both, really, we're mixed, but the VR is probably the stronger component of the two. So do you think in 5 years this metaverse will be a daily part of most people's lives, or do you think it'll be a little bit more of a flop and perhaps a tech product which people talked about, had a huge hype, and now is a little bit less relevant? I was going to say a little bit like crypto, but I do love crypto still, so I won't quite say that. And my Bitcoin is my like long term. If that took off, then there we are. We're happy. What do you think about that? Alex, you haven't really tried VR much, so start with you from the outsider perspective. Do you see this becoming successful or not?
Yeah, I mean, drawing the distinction between AR and VR, I think is important.
Yeah.
And for me, AR is much more likely to become, I think, a big thing. I've seen some really sexy products which are kind of multiple monitors for your workspace that is kind of projected into your eyes, and you have like infinite screen, which sounds wonderful. I think the problem with VR is to get like fully immersive. You need a haptic suit and a 3D treadmill. There's just a lot of stuff to carry around, which I think is the limiting factor. It sort of locates it into a single physical space until we can solve how you move in a intuitive way in VR in reality without bumping into walls and stuff. So I think that's always going to be its limit, and so I kind of for now see it more as a thing for gaming. Where people are going to invest in these sorts of things. That said, could it improve meetings? The pandemic taught us that we're going to be doing a lot of virtual meetings, potentially. But my understanding is the main problem with that isn't so much the immersiveness of the exchange, it's the latency of the call. And that's why people talk over each other and all this stuff.
Apple's will fix that because it will be basically a FaceTime call, but with a fake version of you. It's spooky if you have.
That's very interesting because to your point, one of the stuff that's missing, it's the social cues. Because when I'm looking at you, I can see you blinking. I can read. We actually know we've been trained, to read those cues. So my response will somehow be changed based on what I see. How you perceive what I'm saying. You can't do that if you have a headset on. But you can do it with the Apple one because you'll actually have an image that probably can move in real time with the movement of your face. That can be done. I'm working for a company
Meta
that does that.
trying to do it with the cartoony version. So on like the Meta Quest Pro and on the Meta Quest 3, they have got facial tracking, but it's just not as good. I mean, like, I don't know if you've had a meeting in like Horizon workrooms, but it's terrible. Like I've had one,
It is.
and it was like a Sims character speaking to me. I was
It
like,
is terrible.
What is this? Like, imagine getting fired in VR. Like, it would be like the most brutal thing ever.
But I think there is a bigger point. I don't want to get into the sort of philosophical stuff of it, but it's a bigger point here, which is, why do we always look for technology that can replace what we can do very well at the moment? Why don't we look for applications that actually can complement what we can do at the moment?
Yeah.
And meeting with someone is something that it's an art that we have perfected for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that those things can do? Like, for instance, AR, when I'm actually sitting in front of you and I want to show you something that's a building or whatever, and I can show it to you on the table.
Yeah, if we built up
that brings a little bit more practicality to the whole thing, rather than replacing you with an avatar and trying to make your face look like your current face, and every muscle that you move will move the stuff on the avatar. I don't fully understand why we need to go to that on that route.
Well, what about the question I proposed to Alex just then? Do you think in 5 years the metaverse will succeed or fail? What would you say?
It depends what you mean by succeed.
Like the
VR hasn't succeeded yet. I mean, in the scale of whole
people,
thing.
like phones. Will it replace the smartphone?
No, I don't think so. Not a meta. It depends how you define the metaverse also.
Yeah.
If it's a completely immersive thing, I don't think so. I think
Ready Player One, that you've seen that movie, I imagine, or the book.
For gaming maybe.
Yeah.
But not in real life.
Not for the average person.
No.
Okay.
But I do believe that AR will have, as long as it can be miniaturized, which is the main problem at the moment.
Yeah.
So you can't walk with your mobile pointing at things. You have to have some other stuff, either your earphones or your glasses or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the problem with that, it's a miniaturization thing.
Yeah.
But I think the value of that, because it augments what we already have rather than replacing what we already have, which is a case of VR.
Yeah.
I think it will have a broader application.
Oh yeah, the Google Glass concept. I know it looks terrible.
Yeah.
It's the holy grail for any tech company. That's what they all want to build, because then you've got maps, you've got little text message alerts coming in. You can take calls, and then you get personalized ads, coming at you with which you can't escape because it's on your head. That's like
that's the sort of nightmare solution.
Yeah, but it's what will happen, because they've got to find a way to monetize it somehow. But what about your view on the metaverse succeeding, failing? What would your opinion be?
Yeah. So. I remember making a mistake during the first peak of over-expectation for self-driving car technology. And I had a very long debate with some of my friends around when it'll be adopted. And I promised everyone, this might have been about 5 to 10 years ago.
Okay.
It'll be dominant in society in 2 years, I promise you. There's no way I'm wrong. So I've learned very hard I've learned to not make those sorts of predictions. My direct answer is I don't think it'll achieve the kind of wide adoption that you're describing in 5 years' time. I do think long term what you're describing is likely. We kind of discussed, for me, one of the biggest blockers towards that adoption is just like consumer sexiness. Like the devices are quite bulky, they're quite hard. There's these kind of physical problems that you're talking about before. Once that's solved, and these things can be looks as seamless as an Apple Watch, or as I'm giving them free promo, as a digital watch or a phone. I do think once that gap is removed, you probably will be able to get a lot wider adoption. But at this point, you're probably looking at almost a slightly different evolution of the entire metaverse concept. Yeah. And I think one more thing that's I've been thinking a little bit more recently. I saw a Twitter thread on the Apple Vision Pro product. I'm not sure whether this is fact or not, but someone was claiming that some of the tech that powers it is also EEG, so kind of the brain-computer interface technology, and it will also kind of read signals through your neural patterns to try and make smarter predictions around how to manipulate pixels and the sort of algorithmic side of things. Once that technology bridges beyond kind of a vision immersive and maybe physical immersive experience into actually the depths of our minds and kind of bordering on consciousness, I do think, long-term future, not 5 years here, I'm talking much longer than that. You're probably looking at, a really compelling case for a new way of living and consuming technology. That I do think is quite kind of interesting, but it's just super long-term.
A ton of stories on the Neuralink and similar types of platforms, and when you start, like a brain chip would replace the glasses because it'd just be instant thoughts. It's probably a bit further away, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately these are all stepping stones. VR is a stepping stone to small portable AR in glasses. Maybe a little bit thicker than this, and then that's a stepping stone to connecting it to muscles and the brain, and then ultimately a chip. Would be the end goal. I don't know if that'd be good or bad, but
something interesting in what you said about the self-driving cars, because I can see the full use case for that.
Yeah.
Imagine the time that we will gain by not having to drive the car.
Absolutely.
While if I think about VR, apart from some, I will still call them niche applications. Again, I think that the power in training is fantastic for VR application. I don't see why we want to live in a completely different world, completely isolated from ours, unless the real world and the virtual world, like in augmented reality, are sort of moving into each other and blending and doing that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I think it will be driven by the sexiness, in a way, because you'll always have Apple selling sexy stuff, and a few other companies. But it will also be driven by the usability and usefulness.
Hey, really quick video just to give you a free subscription to Coder magazine. Coder is the #1 publication for all the latest tech news, expert insights, and exclusive industry interviews. With Coder, you get the inside scoop on what's happening with Elon Musk, with Bill Gates, with Jeff Bezos, with Mark Zuckerberg, and so much more. So if you work in the technology industry, then I'd highly recommend that you give Coder a read today. Just scan the QR code on the screen for free access now, or go to welovealpha.com/magazine to get your free subscription today.
Moving on from the metaverse, we have an AI product which is been released. These are, we've got a video on the screen for people watching on YouTube and whatnot. If you want to send me clips, this was originally sent to me on Threads, the new platform from Insta. Check me out on Threads. There's a handle on the screen to send footage and stories. These are the Moonwalkers by Shift Robotics. These AI-powered shoes connect to your existing shoes, allowing you to walk 2.5 times faster than normal, as well as working on stairs. A few people I know have tried these, and they've actually told me really, really positive things. They say that they're really, really easy to use, and they genuinely do as described. You can walk really, really quickly, just like you're walking normally. Now, some people are saying this could be the future of walking. We have... no one's quite cracked walking. We've had bikes for, cycling, we've had skateboards, we've had rollerblades, remember Heelys. But these are a bit different because they use AI to recognize how you're currently walking and will adopt to that. Some people, of course, are saying it's just a gimmick and it's just, going to be a flash in the pan. What's your perspective, though? Alex, what comes to mind when you see AI-powered shoes?
Yeah, I'm firmly in the gimmick camp. I just don't understand what the problem this is trying to solve.
Too slow. You can walk 2.5 times faster.
Yeah, but your problem space is you're in an environment where your surfaces are relatively smooth because those wheels need to be able to walk on it. But somehow you want to get somewhere quick in an environment that has lots of flat surfaces but doesn't have a well-established public transport infrastructure. Like, where is that? Like, when are you in a case where, like, I really want to get to the other side of town quickly, but only by walking?
In a Tesco or in a car park?
In a Tesco, but, like, so you need to start slowing down at the right stop of the aisle so you can get to...
maybe.
I'm a bit perplexed by it. I mean, I guess the technology is quite cool. They say it's exactly like walking. I watched some extra videos. You do have to adjust things a bit. Like, your feet are accelerating underneath you, which means you do need to, like, shift your weight forward.
Okay.
So you do have to kind of learn how to use it properly. And I'm not entirely sure how well it will go around a corner at full tilt. I think you have to kind of start walking in baby steps as you approach the corner so it slows down and then you can go around. But, like, I don't know. I've not tried them. I would love to. I think it could be a real fun, like rollerblading, a fun kind of activity. Like, hey, I'm going to go moonwalking. But I don't think it's going to solve any real transportation issues for anyone.
Okay. Kojo, what's your perspective?
Going back to the age limit question we had before.
Yeah.
This is a product that needs a lower age limit.
Oh, definitely.
Imagine toddlers running around with this. It's the world over.
Gliding around.
Disaster waiting to happen. I'm with you. For me, this is peak hype. I mean, there's maybe a specific angle to this that's quite interesting. I think the branding being AI-powered shoes, that's probably peak AI hype.
Just
right?
put AI on anything.
Yeah,
and,
that's it.
Yeah.
Get your funding.
AI shoes. It's so random. Shoes, AI. We've raised millions, and they have. I think they've raised. I think it was like a Kickstarter or something. But they've raised a lot of money. Yeah.
How do we get crypto in there? That's the real question.
Good point. After this, let's work on the idea.
Free,
So yeah, I mean, if I'm playing devil's advocate and I'm an advocate for this thing, the real compelling part is just advanced robotics, right? It's very similar to the Boston Dynamics thing. There's lots of interacting things that are quite amazing, right? To be able to make that experience is an interplay of various fields of technology, which is cool. The AI-powered bit is pure hype. And yeah, the use case and utility, I'm with you. I actually think your vision for kind of like entertaining rollerblade style thing, that actually could be quite interesting. I do think there's maybe a little bit there. It'd be niche, obviously, but the general kind of super powered shoes, I'm not sold. I'm not sold.
Okay, Adrian.
I'm pretty sure that there are some interesting applications, specific applications.
Mm-hmm.
You can be on that. You can have an exoskeleton also, so you can carry things.
Yeah.
And I do wonder what would happen if everyone on the street will have those. We'll have to have like an FAA for the
for walking.
For walking. I also wonder what will happen if you'll use only this in terms of your ability to actually continuing to have the muscles to do the proper walking.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think it is a little bit of a gimmick at the moment. But again, I can see some applications where you can use it in construction and in a few other, even entertainment. Yeah. But there will be sort of local applications. It's interesting because it's positioned B2C, while the spot robot, it's a sort of B2B thing.
Definitely. Yeah. They're not.
When you position it B2C, you've got a lot of issues to answer for and think about. Yeah.
They are $1,000, give or take. Do you think people will buy them en masse at that price? Do you think it? No.
Again, no, I don't think so.
Well, how much are Givenchy shoes?
Well, the same people will buy that, but again, it's a it's a small minority.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they need to add a Gucci logo to it or something.
There you go.
That's maybe the solution.
Yeah.
Would you want to use them? Would you want to try them?
Definitely would like to try them.
Yeah.
I can't see them being part of my daily life. I mean, to my point about like relatively smooth, flat surfaces. Yeah. We live in, should we say, an older city.
Sure.
We have lots of cobblestones in places. I mean, I was on holiday recently in Bruges. There'd be a nightmare there. So I just can't see it being part of my daily life. I think when I want to commute somewhere quickly, I use the tube, I cycle, whatever. Yeah. Like that's a good way to get from places. And then when I'm in walking distance, I don't need to be 2.5 times faster. Like that's not the problem I'm solving. Yeah. But I do think they look like fun. I mean, it's like ice skating or rollerblading, but with a powered assist. It sounds great.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, speaking on AI again, this time going a little bit more towards robotics. This was a interesting development which happened at a press conference. So for the first time ever, there's been a combined human/robot press conference. An AI robot was asked, will you rebel against humans? At the AI for Good UN Summit in Geneva, Switzerland, the humanoid robots face the media. And in the world's first ever human/robot press conference, the robot, when pressed by the human reporter, replied, I'm not quite sure why you would think that. When asked, will you rebel against humans? The robot replied, I'm not sure why you would think that. Obviously, as tech people, this is we kind of sigh a little bit when we see this.
It's a sort of clickbait.
It's very clickbaity. I will 100% admit to that. Thank you for viewing the podcast. I really appreciate it. This actually was the #1 tech news story in the world for like a couple of days on like pretty much all the major platforms. What are your thoughts on this, Adrian? Do you want to kick us off?
Do you mind if I actually divert that to a much more interesting and sort of real conversation that happened recently? It was called the Monk debate.
Be my guest. I mean, tie it back somehow so the title and thumbnail kind of.
It is in a way it's related to this because it was an open discussion between, on one side, Mark Stegmark and Yoshua Bengio. Okay. Both of them, Bengio, I think his name, yeah. Both prominent AI people.
Okay.
And their side was we are in a race where we might lose the momentum to create the right safeguards for AI.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you had Jan LeCun,
Yes.
who runs the Facebook
French guy, right?
AI group, and Melanie Mitchell, who's
Yeah.
great on this sort of stuff, saying that actually, no, we can't do that. There's a lot of advantages for AI.
Yeah.
It's a complete societal change, and we just have to be a little bit careful.
Yeah.
So, and that's a very interesting, much more less clickbaity, and interesting discussion from people who have done this for a long, long time.
I saw, I don't know if I saw the exact one that you're referring to, but I did see a debate, and I know he's very, he's not very worried, is he, about
No, he's not, but he doesn't present, in my opinion, also a lot of things not to be worried about,
Sure.
that the right framework not to be worried about.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was very interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of pro and con and anti-con and anti-pro
Yeah.
things coming from each side.
Okay.
I think this thing about asking a robot, I mean, heaven knows what they've, the program that the robot to say, the robot could say anything really. I'm a little bit worried that this discussion about AI with these things like that, goes into the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And creates this sort of fear, and creates the sort of Black Mirror real scenarios, and for people who are not necessarily involved in the AI know, all the sort of work that's being done on putting the right safeguards and creating the right framework and all of that sort of stuff. It's moving them into the sort of non-realistic media type of
the
hyped
frenzy
thing.
that comes with it.
Frenzy.
Yeah.
And it's being fed by this sort of articles, which are very sort of shallow, very clickbaity, asking a robot, what on earth can they? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
I agree completely. By the way, I had this exact conversation with Azim, who runs the Exponential View, which is a really popular tech newsletter. I had it on Threads the other day with him, and I was saying, look, it's crazy that this is the story when you have so much interesting stuff happening in AI. This is like the thing that everyone focuses on. Would you guys agree, disagree? I imagine you would agree.
Could I just add one more thing to that?
Please do.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just one more thing, which I think that's an important stuff to debate in that sort of area. Most of those companies, I mean, if you listen to Sam Altman from OpenAI, for instance, he's an extremely rational, thinks about stuff, understands the implications. The problem is not that those companies can get hold of that. The problem is that some rogue bodies could actually get hold of the same sort of thing and transform it into something wrong. Yeah. So in that sort of conjunction, what do you do? Because this sort of technologies that can have a completely profound, it's like nuclear technology, it's the same sort of thing, can have a complete profound implication on everyone's life. Yeah. Should be, we should have a government-led framework for them. Yeah. Because they are too big.
But we are doing something in the
But the governments are too slow.
Yeah.
Which is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I don't know. I mean, like AI regulation, yes, we should have it, in my opinion, because it's just like you said, nuclear weapons. We regulate those, for example, and that's a technology.
Or pharma, or
anything. Yeah. I don't know. Rishi's announced a £100 million AI fund to look at regulation and to fund companies.
I see. Okay.
It's a drop in the bucket compared to Microsoft putting 10 billion into OpenAI. So I don't know. And then even if the West follows these regulations, China or Russia, are they going to follow these? Are they just going to sidestep everything? I don't know. It's a good question. It's a better question than the topic. So let me propose that question to you two. I guess like give me your impressions of I suppose the news conference and the fact that humans are speaking to robots in that way. But I guess more importantly, tie it back to Adrian's question because that was a better one. Do you think we should have regulation? Do you have any ideas on what that should look like and where do we go from there? Do you want to start, Alex?
Yeah, sure. I guess I view it I think that press conference highlights it's an education piece. Like people see these things behaving and all they're really, I mean, this robot it's probably just an LLM hooked up to a speech synthesizer and then hooked up to a robot, right? Like it's nothing overly clever. It's like talking to ChatGPT, but with a more impressive interface, which is fine. And I think the problem is people don't understand what these models are doing and how they actually do it. Like they have no understanding what they're saying, right? They're aping what humans have said previously. They're finding that like at the end of the day, it's a model that's good at predicting what the next token in the sequence should be. That's what it does, right? And it has no understanding of what it's actually producing and putting out there.
It's like autocomplete.
Basically, a really clever autocomplete.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think that's the key point is that we have to spread that information out there. And then actually in that way, I kind of view these LLMs as having a similar societal impact to social media, right? It was this game-changing change that we brought in. And we've had to learn, okay, it's going to echo your own views at you. It's going to be full of fake news. It's going to be all of these things. And society has had to learn and create its own kind of societal regulations, which aren't perfect, right? We agree there's still some problems there. And I think LLMs are similar. People have to understand, like, what is it actually doing? How can it actually do it? Like I overheard someone the other day saying, they tried to check if some work had been created by ChatGPT by asking it, did you write this? And of course, there's no way of knowing. He doesn't keep a record of everything. And it'd be a gross breach of privacy laws if it was copying snippets from other people's conversations. But clearly they think it's like a super intelligent agent that can do all of this stuff. So I think it's just education. Like, what do these things do? How do they actually go about doing it? And trying to get people to like understand and kind of relate to that. And that's going to be better than bringing in government regulation, because I think, like you said, it's always quite slow and it lags behind. It's always several paces behind where the technological front is. Yeah. But I think society can adjust a bit quicker.
Yeah. But it's interesting because 6 or 7 of those big companies in America recently, last week, have asked the government to step in and do some sort of...
But is that to stop startups? Is that to stop competition? They've already gained the market share.
Possibly.
They're trying to silence any newcomers, maybe, or maybe they're all doing the right thing. I mean,
possibly they're still opaque.
Yeah,
you don't know exactly what are the models that OpenAI have trained their LLMs on.
It's not OpenAI, is it? It's closed AI, really.
Oh, it's closed AI, exactly.
Yeah.
And
GPT-4,
the question is, should that information be public or not?
Yeah. Okay. What's your view on this clip, on this topic, on this complicated mess?
Yeah. So I think you guys have done a really good job of covering, I think, most of the most pertinent points that I'd make. So I'll try and take a slightly different angle. But it's definitely interesting that I think that demo could have been done maybe 10 years ago, maybe even 15, and been exactly identical. Even without LLMs and GPT, RNNs and sequence-to-sequence models were able to do similar things, just were less capable. Just to feed both your points, it's definitely a bit of a red herring, the amount of tension we've driven here. The one thing that I think really interested me was why is it so interesting to people, right? Particularly outside of the tech community, we're kind of preaching to the choir with a lot of the things that we're saying. But outside of that, there is this deep kind of like human thing about personalization and human faces, right? It's kind of the face element and the robotic element that I think really drove the virality of that clip. And it's probably a deeper comment on the human psyche than it is on the technology itself. It's like we want to see ourselves. Like even all of our conversations around like AGI and some of the even more interesting topics still for me feel very kind of human, self-centered, and we think these things will be like us and they'll have wants and needs. And the reality, as you said, there's a huge education gap around these things. And as you said, it's a token predictor. It's not a person. It's not a robot with thoughts and feelings. To go back to your point again, I think education probably is going to be the biggest driver, because it'll also drive regulation. I think the thing that I fear with a lot of regulation, even though I'm with you that's needed, is they also don't know, right? The people that are making these decisions, and it does work in tandem with the rest of society. We need really open models, as you said, and
I think you can sort that thing out if when you do the regulation, you actually have a broad, diverse group of people helping with that regulation. So it's not only the leaders of OpenAI, Microsoft, and all of those, but you get people as diverse as possible from all sorts of backgrounds trying to actually come up with something. Otherwise, we'll do a regulation only for some that will satisfy some people and not the others.
Yeah.
But your point is interesting about the robot looking very sort of human. Because actually the LLMs, the ChatGPT is a very interesting thing. And the adoption is also related to the fact that it's a sort of natural language. And it responds in a way that you're expecting someone else to respond to you. Yeah. Even has a sort of tiny little delays and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. And people are expecting that.
Yeah, they're humanizing it. My parents still say please and thank you to their Alexa. It's people humanize.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. That footage, that story was sent to me on LinkedIn. So feel free to send me clips on LinkedIn if you enjoy the show. My handle's on the screen right there. Okay, final clip is AR glasses, which effectively allow you to see through walls to a degree. I'll show this clip on the screen for those watching on video at home. These are MIT researchers who have developed this augmented reality application, which allows you to essentially see through walls and boxes using RFID tags. So, this could be used in like a warehouse to locate items, or maybe even at home if you're the type of person that loses their keys or their wallet or whatever. And the AR will show where the product is, allowing you to see through walls, doors, boxes, whatever, to identify where different products are. Think about AirTags basically for a non-tech person, just having them smaller and linked to every product when it's being produced and manufactured. So when you're seeing the world, you have a digital layer on top of that, which you can, go to your settings, I want to find out where that t-shirt is, and then boom, it would an arrow would point you to that t-shirt, for example. Not an application which people have really done much with AR in terms of like RFID tags, but something that's starting to become more and more popular. That clip was DM'd to me on Instagram, so feel free to send clips on there if that's your preferred platform. What are your thoughts on AR glasses allowing you to see through walls? Is it a gimmick? Is it something that could scale? Kojo, what's your opinion?
I think the branding probably urges on the side of over-promising a little bit. I mean, so, fundamentally, seeing through walls isn't quite what's happening, right? You kind of need the RFID system requires kind of a tagging and labeling and identifying of that. That side, I think my initial reaction to that was definitely just privacy and concerns. It seems to kind of neglect this movement that we have around technology being overly invasive. And I do worry about that with a suite of technologies, not just that one.
Yeah.
I think that was my initial reaction. Slightly more interestingly, I remember, so this is, I think this came out of an MIT project, if I remember what I was reading correctly.
Yeah, MIT researchers put it together, yeah.
I remember a few years back, they released this product called the Alter Ego, which was kind of like an early mock EEG type device where you hooked it up to kind of the side of your face, and what it did, it would kind of read your internal dialogue to try and map that to actions, right? So you could kind of talk to yourself, and it would read the muscle patterns as well as brain patterns to try and derive the right action.
Okay.
And I remember the debate and reaction around that was also, well, okay, think about how intrusive that could be if it could really read your thoughts in the truest sense. And there's a bit of a similar thing there that I thought when initially reading that, it's like, wow, this is actually quite amazing technology, and I could see the upside of it. But again, are we doing a good enough job of potentially adding the right safeguards for the potential to misuse that technology? That was probably the main reaction I had reading that.
I love what you said there about the privacy, because we had this issue with AirTags, with people, putting them on people without them knowing about it. With this, you could have a display of where everybody is, and you could have arrows and directions going towards them, which would be crazy. What's your take, Alex, when you see the story, when you see this clip? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think technologically it's quite an impressive feat. I think it's solving quite a complex challenge. It's trying to map, the RFIDs. They'll be like, they emit on the basis of a signal you send at it, and it's trying to map that information over to the visual layer and then present that as a unified interface, which is like, it's a good problem. But again, it's like, I don't really see this becoming a mass market adoption thing.
Sure.
I'm not even that convinced. I mean, certainly the lady in that photo didn't look like she was striding with purpose to the place where the thing she was trying to find was. So it's clearly not perfect. And I'm not sure it's going to revolutionize warehouses anytime soon. Versus, say, like a handheld scanner that like beeps when you go over the right box.
Yeah.
I mean, RFID tags, wonderful technology. I think they're a fantastic thing, and they have already done enormous work in improving like how we ship and manage all of that. So interesting to see someone trying to use it for a new use case. I think the article you sent us described them as creepy glasses.
Okay,
I'm not entirely sure they're creepy. I'm not entirely sure how you would even set it up to be creepy. And it also gave the use case of finding your shirt in a big pile of shirts.
Okay.
To which I'd say, have you considered a wardrobe? But I think it's a very interesting problem they solved, and credit to them. But yeah, I think a few iterations away from being useful.
It's pretty early stages, isn't it? I mean, maybe one day when you got the Apple, AR glasses and they look like this, and then boom, you've got an RFID on you with your with your phone in your pocket. Maybe it will have your name above your head, your age, your likes, your dislikes, what you last tweeted. Maybe when they have that integration, it becomes a little bit more useful, that sort of thing. But right now, finding a shirt, pretty primitive use case, right? What's your take, Adrian, on all this?
Well, my first problem was, again, around privacy, I think. I thought that was something that's not being discussed. But I'm not too worried in a way, because again it's something that started with this sort of silly example of the shirt, which it's appealing to a sort of B2C thing, and we know that that's probably the hardest route to get those into the market.
Yeah.
The easiest one is very focused application. So I could see, for instance, firefighters wearing a helmet that allows them, when they go to a certain building, to know exactly, to look through the building and see where the different points of
that's a great idea.
Where the pipes are, where the rooms are, where the doors are, understanding which doors they can open, which door they can't, so the fire cannot they don't have to lose control of the whole thing, they can isolate it, all of that sort of stuff. So applications which are very sort of niche focus, but provide a huge degree of usability and usefulness, rather than finding your shirt. But somehow those things are, again, clickbait. They want to just be thrown out there, so relate to something that we use in everyday life. And the technology is interesting. RFID tags are interesting, everything around them. We've seen this sort of, also the use of words see and read in the example that you gave. It's a little bit overextended.
It's just typical marketing stuff. What all companies do, don't they, when they release something?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right. There's probably going to be a couple of really good use cases that come from this. Identifying a shirt is probably not one of them, but the firefighter example, great example. If you're going into a smoked building and you're trying to find people and they've got an Apple Watch on and that's got some tag in it, and boom, you got directions showing you where to go. Great, if you've never been in that building before, that could really help. And I mean that we've just come up with that on the spot. There's probably 100 more that we could think of if we really had to rack our brains.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you all for coming in. Great to get your perspectives, your point of views and opinions into what's happening in the world of tech. And thank you all for watching. See you next week. Thank you. Hey, thanks for watching this podcast. Make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, comment, etc., etc. And I'll see you in the next episode.